Business Matters starts
Good evening,
now.
Business Matters. Good evening. We're talking about news, your valley. And I want to say this right to you, Mike Miarelli. I grew up, my dad, if he didn't have his morning call at 8 o'clock or no, maybe 6 o'clock in the morning, it was a big deal. And it's ever evolving. And it can't be easy. But you've got to be progressive in almost any business in this world.
Yeah, no question about it, Tony. It's great to be here. You know, I was saying to George before the show, our business changes every 3 hours now. So it's been quite a change for us, and but we're evolving, we're changing, and we're working on it. So.
You've been through a lot of ownership, too, and somehow you've survived that. It hasn't been easy, I'm sure.
No, we've been through quite a bit. I've been there, this is my 23rd year.
And you started in sports, right?
Yeah, I was sports editor.
Yeah.
I became Metro editor, now editor, but 23 years, and I've seen about everything you can see. Yeah,
Bernie, you've been a blogger for some time, and you have a real serious following. Are you surprised? First of all, why do you do it? And I don't think it's for economics, but what's your motivation?
Well, I always viewed myself as a frustrated letter to the editor writer. You could only write one letter to the editor every month. You know, beyond that, they won't publish you. So I decided, well, I'll start my blog. I'll start my own blog, and it just kind of morphed into what I consider a service. I try to complement, not compete with the mainstream media.
Oh, that's a good point. Was there ever any thought that you were going to join with the mainstream media? I mean, you had a following.
One time with Glenn Cransley, when he was the editor at the Morning Call, and also Joe Owens when he was the editor at the Express Times, there was a lot of collaborative efforts between both newspapers, or between the newspapers and the blogs. Yeah. Not just my blog, but there were several blogs.
Gotcha. I guess to that point, Nick, do you keep an eye on that, and are you interested in maybe joining with bloggers or doing more internally yourself?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all, and I can tell you I read Bernie's blog this morning. I read it almost every morning. We have
Did he say anything bad about me, by the way?
No, not today, but check in tomorrow.
Not yet.
I will say that there's a robust blogging community in the Lehigh Valley, and I do agree with Bernie that they complement.
Do you feel they chip away a little bit at your?
A little bit. I can only speak for the Express Times and LehighValleyLive.com when I say that some of the opinion stuff that Bernie offers, I don't think we do enough of it. I think we can do more.
It's obvious the reader wants it, I guess, for the most part.
Yeah,
real quick, Dan Holzman. So you're maybe not as in more of a competitive environment. You're really, you know, the morning show that you do, for instance, you do many shows there, but that's an example. I'll use traffic, weather, and some talk. So you're kind of, well, I guess, what's your goal when you're doing that, the little bit that you have? I mean, you don't have tons of time. What's your goal?
Well, morning drive, we want to be a companion for people driving into work more than anything. And we know for a lot of those people, we may have one newscast for them. So we want to try to get them as much as we can in as short a period of time as we can, because we know chances are they're not in the car for an hour and a half hearing 2-3 newscasts as the morning moves along.
Gotcha. So you can get up in the morning and do some research, and bingo, you've got a couple top stories, and that's where you're going with.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hey, this is going to be a great show. Stay with us. We're going to talk about news, your news in this valley. Be right back. Business Matters.
You're watching Business Matters, because if it's business, it matters. Want to enjoy the show on the go? Subscribe to our podcast. Go to www.wfmz.com/Business Matters for more information. Now, back to Tony Iannelli.
Hey, we are back. And Bernie, I want to ask you, because you're entertaining is what you are, and I don't think you can help it, but also you can be tough and can be cutting. Is it hard? Is it hard for you sometimes knowing that people might not be happy with you, or is that just the game?
I don't care one bit what people think. I don't care if I have one reader or 50,000 readers. The one thing I would say, and I wanted to get this in, is that because of the newspapers, the dailies are no longer sending journalists to cover local news stories. They're not at the meetings anymore. They used to send squads of reporters out every single night. They're no longer there. I do think that the slack is being picked up, not just by one blog, but it's also being picked up by several news sites, including WFMZ and including WLVR. They are sending people to cover these meetings that were not getting coverage before. And that really needs to be done,
Gotcha.
and it's not being done.
And there's a demand for it. I know we just had we had a parting event for Mayor Donchez, and he said, hang on to your local news. You need them. They give you the perspective. So, Mike, you only have so many people, and I know how hard this is for you, given the amount of people that you have, but you have a great history, and you want to hang on to that. Talk about that.
Yeah, so Bernie's right about that. We can't cover every meeting. Years ago, when I first started...
Does that frustrate you at times?
No, sure it does, yeah. But years ago, when I started, when I did this in the last 20 years, it's changed quite a bit, but we don't have as many people. But back then, we covered, we had 5 bureaus. We had, 50
The two largest governments in the Lehigh Valley are Lehigh County government and Northampton County government. I defy you to name one time that a reporter has been to either county from either newspaper in the last year.
That's true. As far as meetings, that's true. Although I'm hoping to change that. We're changing our focus of coverage a little bit. But I will say this, Bernie, that we've covered stories. We haven't been to the meetings so much, but we've covered stories. Yeah. Like, for instance, the other day, the canvassing we just did the other day. You
get a news release and you plaster it on the newspaper. That's what you do.
We did Northampton County. We did the canvassing the other day, covered that with the canvassing. It seemed like a boring story, but Lynch was there. Steve Lynch was there, and we thought we should cover that story. It's an important story.
All right,
so we tried to do that.
I'm going to go back to work. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm not going to let you off easy, so
no,
Bernie's got a question.
And, these are fair points.
But you have the same thing where you're looking, I wish I had more people?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at one point, I've been there 21 years, and at one point it was very unusual for us to miss any municipal government meeting. As far as the county stuff, Bernie brings up a good point. I will say I don't know. I think he might inflate the interest from residents in county business. Most people aren't dealing with county government on a daily basis. Now, that could be an argument. It could be a cop-out. I understand both perspectives. But, the fact of the matter is when there's something important going on, we do try to get there.
Do you wish when you said, Bernie,
Northampton County has a $440 million budget. Lehigh County's budget, I think, is almost $500 million a year. That's the expenditure of a lot of public money, and it should be covered, okay? And people may not be interested in it because, yeah, everybody's interested in their own city government and in their own borough government, but you're not there either, okay? You need to be at the meetings.
But do you give them credit knowing that their economics are not what they use? I mean, I guess the question is,
if their economics don't justify their core function, which is telling the news, close up shop.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, Dan, I'm going to let you jump in here. You're going to be the voice of reason, Dan Holzman.
God help us all. When I first started out at WAEB, we had 5 full-time people in the news department. My job was to do the evenings, and Tuesday night, Allentown City Council. The next Tuesday night, Bethlehem City Council, so forth. I was at all those meetings, some of which ran till midnight, 1 in the morning.
Sure.
So we had that covered for the morning drive. Right now, our news department is sitting in this chair.
Yeah. So you're doing the work of 5 people, is what they're saying. That's how valuable.
And getting compensated. Oh no, wait a second. No. So I mean, that's just the reality of the times. Like Mike and Nick were saying, the personnel just is not there anymore.
Yeah.
It just is not. It's impossible to be everywhere.
Yeah, and go ahead, Mike. You were going to say something.
Well, I was going to say, that doesn't mean, just because we don't cover the meetings every time, doesn't mean we're not covering the news. Now, I will say this, Nick can back up this. So, in this age of digital, you have so many metrics to check. We've covered plenty of meetings. People aren't reading those stories. So I'm talking about the meeting story. I'm not talking about counties.
I was going to ask this. I'm going to go to Bernie. That makes me. This new digital, you can tell within minutes how many hits it's getting. Is that right? You can.
Yeah, but it's not so much the hits. It's just the interest. It's the engagement of the audience. It's page views, but it's also engagement of the audience. So, if we're covering meetings and 10 people are reading that story,
your obligation is not to give people what they want. It's to give people what they need.
And what do you feel?
That was the way it used to be.
Yeah,
it's not that way anymore.
That still is the way it should be.
Well,
that's why you guys keep sinking further and further down. That's why every so many months you let off more reporters. You're not thinking things through. Okay, you need to do your job. You need to cover meetings. You need to tell people what's going on, and you're not doing it. I'll give you an example. Not long ago, I got a news release from a guest who was just sitting here, okay, about him opening up a or him donating a building to the Allentown City, okay, so that they could have a police department. He sent the same news release a couple days later to the Morning Call, and they actually refused to publish it. And the reason he was given was because I had it first. Now that's ridiculous.
But wait a minute.
News is news.
Wait a minute.
News is news.
We did get that.
Eventually.
And there was a mix-up in the release.
Yeah.
But it came from the person who was doing the landlord.
Right.
So we weren't just going to run his release.
I gotcha.
We talked to the police chief. We talked to the mayor. We talked to him. We got a whole different story on it. We had a whole another story than you had.
So
you had a story on his release. That's all you had. We talked to the mayor, the police chief. We talked.
You don't think I talked to him? You don't think I talked to the mayor?
I know you talked to him, but that was one source.
You don't think I talked to the
So
to
we did
people?
the story. We didn't just ignore the story.
Gotcha. All right, Nick, go ahead.
You did.
I want you to jump in
Yeah,
on this.
I mean, I don't, respectfully, Bernie, I don't think you understand what we're looking at and what we're up against. Mike is correct that just covering meetings isn't going to get us to where we need to be in 2021. There are plenty of ways to cover government. I can tell you right now, we have put out upwards of 86 right-to-know requests this year in Northampton County and Lehigh County. We're digging for information. Now, no, we may not be sitting in a meeting and finding out how much they're going to spend on the lawnmower, but we're doing the work that you're talking about.
So in the trenches, Bernie, what do you think people want? What do they want? Because it is a business. They've got to sell. They got to sell subscriptions.
I can tell you what they don't. What they want is they do want meeting coverage. They also want to see the local sports covered, which they're not. Which is not happening anymore. Local sports coverage is missing, and that is very important to a lot of people.
Did it ever make you want to monetize what you're doing, thinking getting in that game?
No, I don't want to monetize it because I view what I'm doing as a public service.
All right, stay with us, Business Matters. We will be back. We're talking news, local news.
You're watching Business Matters, because if it's business, it matters. Want to voice your thoughts on this week's topic or guests? Sound off on social media. Use the hashtag BusinessMattersTV. That's hashtag BusinessMattersTV. Now, back to Business Matters.
Hey, we are back. Business Matters. I'm going to go to you, Dan Holzman, because it kind of mirrors a little bit in the sense that ownership used to be local, not anymore. More people doing news, not so much anymore. You know, this evolution, where do you think radio news is headed?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I think one person right now is covering many markets in radio, and it's not just our company, it's other companies as well. You see it in newspapers as well. People out of the area are having stories published locally because everyone almost has a relationship at this point with another market. And I think that's going to expand. It certainly isn't going to get smaller.
I got you. I want to go to George, but real quick, how important is national news vis-a-vis local news when you're publishing?
I would say our bread and butter is local news.
Okay, yeah.
And national news is definitely.
All right, George Wacker, we got you on here. Your thoughts. You heard the beginning of this segment. What are your thoughts?
Sure. I mean, thank you again for having me on.
Yeah.
I'm curious where people are, getting their news. We were asking on social media. We went yesterday and said, where are people getting their news? And a lot of it isn't from newspapers. I think we covered that, but it is a lot through social media. Some people are getting it through apps that some people don't talk about, the Discords, the Twitter. They're looking at Apple, their cards and their phones. So it's interesting to see where people are getting it.
It's interesting. It says half of the adults use social media to get their news, but yet 80% trust local news. Yeah. So maybe that's to your point, Bernie. That's where they
more of it.
That's where they trust. And I think
one of the problems. I'm sorry. One of the problems is people believe everything they see on social media too.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's changed from 10 years ago, you were buying the Morning Call, and that was where you were getting your newspaper or the Express Times Lehigh Valley Live. Now you have so many options. You open up Facebook, you're getting news from every different angle. It's hard sometimes for people to discern what's the best news to pick.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I don't think people are that stupid that they believe everything that they read. But there is such a thing. It's called confirmation bias, and you tend to look out for news sources that pretty much go with your own biases, and that's why I think it's important to have, as an objective, even though I'm a blogger and I'm pretty slanted in the way I look at things, I think it's important to have several sources where it's just the facts.
Gotcha. Mike Miorelli, I wanted to ask you this. What is the shift from, old school, get the newspaper in the morning to electronic now? How rapid, I guess?
Light years.
Okay.
Light years away. I mean, when it was just print, right? We had stories. The deadline was 5 o'clock.
Right.
The deadline is now for a story now.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you get it right, you get it up. And if you have a story up first, you win. But you have to be fair and you have to be first.
Gotcha.
And you have to be right.
So you're saying
that's changed. It's just the speed that we work at now is so much faster.
And no longer the time to check sources and take hours.
No, we still do that.
Yeah.
In fact, we get beat sometimes because we do check sources and we make sure that we're right on it. So we'll get beat sometimes, but the digital age is definitely speeded everything up.
Are you finding young people going into journalism, or do they see the tea leaves? Or are you still finding some good candidates that are?
Yeah. We have 3 openings now. We're interviewing. We interviewed 6 people over the last couple of weeks.
See some good people. That mind thinking is just wrong. Okay. I mean, if we come out first, we win. We get beat sometimes. That's not the right thinking.
But isn't that what the free market demands, though?
No. They want a good story, okay? And if you come out with something right away and it's garbage, people are going to eventually. I realize that's not what you do. People are going to eventually. That's what I do. People are going to eventually recognize that, okay? And they're not going to rely on you as a source.
That's why I said we have to get it right.
But the whole idea of winning, that's not winning is getting it right.
Bernie and George, I want to ask you this.
Well, we're going to get it right and win, so we get it both ways.
All right. Let me ask a quick question, if I can. I'll go to George, then to Bernie. Do you find with certain stories that your readership, if you will, ebbs and flows? In other words, if you do a critical, do some people jump off? We're back to Bernie of saying that people want to read what they want, they want to think.
One of the things that we focus on is, for a marketing company too, is putting out news that's coming directly from clients, which is something that hasn't really been able to be done over only the last couple of years. For example, if you're a company, you're able to get that news out directly to people, whereas before you might have been sending it to a news outlet. So that's a little bit different as well.
Again, same thing with Bernie. You've got a consistent, long readership, but do you ever find that certain stories will either bring more people in or turn people off?
Yeah, if I write about Allentown, that'll definitely increase the interest, no matter what the story is for some reason. Probably because there's a lot of Allentown people. Northampton County actually does not generate the interest that, to your point, okay, it does not generate the interest that other stories do. But when you talk about bad government, that does generate a lot of interest.
Do you find that, Dan? I know you always tickle with a couple lead stories. I often wonder, how do you pick that?
Relevance to our audience, again, because I only have 2-3 minutes maybe to get everything out there that I can. It better be relevant to the listener who's driving into work, or they're not going to be listening. Do
you give Mike some credit that some of the news, that picking up that paper early morning is part of what you do in terms of finding out what's going on? Besides,
sure, yeah. And Mike has an extremely difficult job in terms of publishing times and things of that nature. And working in newspaper now is unbelievably difficult, I would imagine.
What do you think the future is, Mike Miorelli?
I think the future is digital. I think that's why.
100%. No longer will someone.
Well, I would say. I mean, it's hard to say. People talk about print going away. I'm not as bearish on print as other people, but eventually it will go away. Think of it this way: in 20 years, 30 years, people are going to say they delivered a newspaper every morning, 7 o'clock. Every morning they did that. That's like the milkman 50 or 30 years ago, right? They're going to say, they really did that? And I think digital, that's why we focus on digital subscribers, Bernie. That's just the fact. So we're looking at digital subscribers. So in 20 years, if our digital subscribers are up where they should be, we'll be successful. If not,
I think you might find more even local newspapers. What Bernie started out years ago doing blogging-wise, now you're finding some straight news sources, like Saucon Source is one of them, located in Hellertown. They're putting out, he's a quality journalist, putting out quality stuff, and I think it's a team of like 1 or less. So I think you might find more of those. They're going to be harder to compete, but they're going to be out there.
Yeah, very good point.
He's out there, and also, like, there's a Facebook page that covers Nazareth. Okay, it's called Nazareth News, and they're pretty good at telling people what's going on. And you also have some hyper-local newspapers like Home News.
Bernie, do you feel for the seasoned journalists, people that you knew that really love their business?
Absolutely.
And see it's really hard.
I feel terrible for them.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. All right, stay with us. Business Matters will be back for the final segment.
You're watching Business Matters, because if it's business, it matters. Miss an episode of Business Matters? Catch up online. Go to www.wfmz.com/Business Matters to watch the most recent episodes. Now, back to Tony Iannelli.
Hey, we are back with one of our people that make this show happen, Brittany Whalen. Go ahead. This is a great show. I'm getting out of your way.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Mike, working in public policy for the Chamber, I'm trying to constantly stay up to date with the news. What are traditional newspapers doing to engage the younger generation so we don't always turn to social media first?
Good question.
It is a good question. My original answer would be social media, because that's where you are. We actually are trying to do more Instagram.
Okay.
Then and I think that's something we could be a lot better at, and the younger folks are looking at that a lot more. So I think that's one avenue we have not done a great job with, but we will.
Brittany, but the younger people you interact with, do they go to the traditional news sources?
I still do.
Okay, good.
I still do.
All right, go ahead.
But I do want to say, George, I love your Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, as your popularity grows, do you see yourself expanding to cover other areas outside of the Lehigh Valley, or is this your focus?
Well, it's fun that you mentioned that. We just cut a podcast where we visited Newtown. We were able to visit a shop down there and do a podcast episode down there. We've had over 3 million downloads on our podcast, so that's something that we definitely see the future is digital, and we're happy to include the Lehigh Valley, and it's growing and expanding, so there's a lot of places that we can continue.
George, are you less, are you more mainstream, if you will? Are you less opinionated in your blog?
I am now.
Okay.
We've changed over the years to kind of go a little bit more that way to attract more people and some of the younger crowd as well.
Gotcha. Okay, you got something from anybody else?
Well, back to Mike. 2/3 of Americans say they're drained and feel worn out from the news, whether it's news about the pandemic or political news. What do you see journalists doing to ensure that they're not reporting and it's emotionally draining?
I think that the best thing we can do is differentiate our news, give you stories that you can't find anywhere else. And that's what we try to do every single day. And I think you're right about the coronavirus. We've seen a real fatigue with that. That was a big driver for us last year. We did so many stories on that, and so many people were interested in it. But now we see people are tired of that. So yeah, going forward, stories that you can't find anywhere else.
Are you mad at Bernie and Dan? Is that what it is?
No, not at all. I'll go to Bernie next.
All right.
All right, earlier we were talking about the importance of local news coverage, and it's great just to ensure accountability. Some say media keeps the checks and balances on our local elected officials. How do you see we keep the scope on the local elected officials as things become more nationalized?
Well,
It's a long question, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did I forgot? Oh, go ahead, Barry.
I think that what we need to do is we need to be there, okay, and that's the problem.
But do you understand the
we have not
economics?
been there.
I'm just saying.
But the WFMZ is able to send reporters to just about every meeting that occurs throughout the Lehigh Valley. I don't know why the Morning Call can't do it, why the Express Times can't do it. You could send a stringer, you could send somebody. You're going to find you've learned so much by going to a meeting that you don't learn when you don't go to meetings.
Yeah. All right, we got 1 minute to go, and that is it. So I'm going to go across from you. You got 30 seconds. Your thoughts, and I'll start with you. Go ahead, Dan.
It's going to be fascinating to see where the news industry goes in the next 5 to 10 years. Print, audio, and certainly television as well. I think digital is clearly the way it's going to be trending. It's going that way right now in radio with podcasts and people with very specific interests going to specific locations to get their information.
Does that worry you a bit?
I'm sorry?
Does that worry you a little bit?
Yes, it does.
Are you thinking my job, maybe? Is that what you're thinking, maybe in the future?
I'll let Bernie take that one.
Yeah. Bernie, your final thoughts, 30 seconds.
Well, I agree that we're going digital, and the newspapers are going away.
Gotcha. Mike Miarelli.
I disagree with that. I don't think newspapers are going anywhere. I think that even through all our changes, I think we've still got the biggest news source gathering in the Valley, and I think we're going to be here for a long time.
George Wacker, close us out.
I think it's vital to keep local journalists and local journalism, and I'm excited that the Lehigh Valley being local is going to have so many more opportunities to share the stories within it, and I think you're going to see more of that.
All right, very good point. It's all yours, Britt. Close us out. Go ahead.
All right, another great episode with incredible guests. We'll see you right here next week at 7:30, and remember, if it's business, it matters.
Good point. Good job. Good job.